Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Nathan Boyd, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Sergeant Catherine Rooney. We warmly welcome cadets from the Royal Australian Naval College, HMAS Creswell, Rankin Division, and students from Geelong Grammar School, Turok, and Cairo campuses. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had done for us, what they had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance of the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who gave their lives for us in war and in operation for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid by the pace of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Colonel Douglas Clelland Pigdon. Douglas Pigdon was born in Melbourne on the 6th of December 1891, the only son of Thomas and Elizabeth Pigdon. His grandfather was John Pigdon, a successful building contractor and former Mayor of Melbourne. Pigdon was educated at Carlton College, Melbourne Church of England Grammar School and Trinity College. While still a student, he was commissioned as Second Lieutenant in the 51st Infantry Regiment in 1912. When war was declared, Pigdon chose to serve as a combatant and was appointed Second Lieutenant in the 14th Battalion. In November 1914, he transferred to the Australian Army Medical Corps and was promoted to Captain. Captain Pigdon travelled to Egypt with the 4th Field Ambulance, and in April 1915 was attached to the 1st Australian General Hospital. After returning to Australia with casualties in June, Pigdon returned to the war in November 1915 as a member of the 8th Field Ambulance, later transferring to the 22nd Field Ambulance Brigade while in Egypt. In March 1916, he travelled to France with his unit. On the 1st of December 1916, Pigdon transferred to the 15th Field Ambulance. He stayed with this unit until mid-1917, when he transferred to AIF headquarters in London before returning to Australia. With the Great War over, Pigdon married Beatrice Holtham at Melbourne Church of England Grammar School Chapel on the 10th of December 1919. He obtained his surgical fellowship in 1925 and established himself as a consultant surgeon in Mentone, later becoming a consultant in Melbourne. In 1925, he rejoined the Citizens Military Force and in 1935 was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and became Commanding Officer of the 4th Field Ambulance. Pigdon enlisted for service in Second World War on the 30th of August 1940 at the age of 48. On the 1st of January 1941, he was appointed Lieutenant Colonel and given command of No. 2 Convalescent Depot. Embarking in mid-April, he landed a fortnight later in Singapore. In July, Pigdon was appointed Colonel and took command of the 13th Australian General Hospital. In November, the hospital relocated to the Malayan mainland and occupied a newly built, but not quite finished, mental hospital. When the Japanese launched their invasion of Malaya in early December, their rapid advance soon forced the withdrawal of the 10th Australian General Hospital to Singapore, leaving the 13th as the only Australian hospital in Malaya. The hospital doubled its patient capacity and treated most of the casualties from the AIF's battles in Johor. As the fighting came closer, the hospital became a large-scale casualty clearing station. Eventually, the approach of the Japanese also forced the 13th to withdraw to Singapore. During the fighting for Singapore, the hospital was subjected to bombing, sustaining hits to its kitchen and a ward, and had to operate under complete blackout conditions at night. Mounting casualties outstripped the hospital's capacity, and patients had to lie on the lawns around the building. With defeat imminent, nursing sisters were evacuated on 3 ships. The last contingent left aboard the ill-fated Vinnerbrook on the 12th of February. In the final days of the fighting, the 13th found itself at the edge of the British Commonwealth perimeter around Singapore City. By the 19th of February, it was treating 1,273 patients and had absorbed the staff of the 4th Casualty Clearing Station, the 2nd Mobile Bacteriological Laboratory, and the 2nd 10th Field Ambulance. With the fall of Singapore, this composite unit re-established itself in buildings at Seralang Barracks, part of the sprawling prisoner of war complex on the Changi Peninsula. Pigdon remained in command of this composite unit until August 1942, when he and other senior officers left Singapore as part of a senior officers' party. The group were interned for a period in Formosa, modern-day Taiwan, before being sent to Mukden, an industrial city in Manchuria, where they joined a group of about 1,400 American prisoners of war in April or May of 1945. The Mukden camp was located on the outskirts outskirts of the city and consisted of 3 factories: a tannery, a textile factory, and a steel and lumber mill, where the men worked as forced labourers. The camp was liberated by Russian troops in August 1945, but Pigdon would not live to see freedom. He died from a cerebral tumour on the 6th of July 1945, the only Australian to die in the camp. He was 53 years old, survived by a widow, 2 daughters, and a son. His remains were buried later in Hong Kong in the Saiwan War Cemetery, where they lie today under the simple inscription, "They are in peace." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Colonel Douglas Clelland Pigdon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support for the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID and wish you all a very pleasant evening.